moment in history where God sent just one angel to take out an entire army. This isn't fiction, it's a documented act of divine deliverance in the face of one of the most feared empires of the ancient world. If you've ever felt surrounded, hopeless, or outmatched, this story holds the key to real hope and supernatural victory. By the end, you'll learn why this moment still matters, and how it can apply to your life right now. This is the Word, Bible stories that teach, inspire, and transform. Let's dive in. In this video, we tell the truly remarkable chapter of biblical history, focusing on the miraculous deliverance of Jerusalem from the formidable Assyrian Empire during the reign of King Hezekiah. When Jerusalem stood no chance against the mighty Assyrian Empire, God stepped in, and one angel ended the war overnight. To fully appreciate the gravity of this event, it is essential to understand the historical context. The Assyrian Empire was a brutal powerhouse in the ancient Near East, crushing smaller kingdoms and threatening the survival of Judah. During this turbulent time, King Hezekiah came to power, and soon faced a crisis that would test more than just his leadership. Assyrian King Sennacherib launched a relentless campaign against Jerusalem, determined to break its spirit and force its surrender. The siege wasn't just military, it was psychological. His envoys mocked Hezekiah's faith, proclaiming that no god could save them from Assyria's might. With the city surrounded and fear spreading, Hezekiah made a bold move. He turned to prayer. He sought help from the prophet Isaiah, who brought a message of divine assurance: Jerusalem would not fall. Then came the turning point. One night, a mysterious and miraculous event unfolded. An angel of the Lord struck down thousands of Assyrian troops. By morning, Sennacherib's army was in retreat. Jerusalem was saved. This wasn't just a military escape, it was a powerful story of faith under fire. Hezekiah's trust in God became a defining moment in Judah's history and a lasting example of hope in the face of overwhelming odds. In this video, we'll break down the events behind this dramatic rescue, explore the key players, and reflect on what this ancient story still teaches us today about resilience, leadership, and faith when everything's on the line. Join us as we uncover the details of this awe-inspiring event, examining the historical backdrop, the key figures involved, and the profound impact this deliverance had on the people of Jerusalem and the broader biblical narrative. Through this exploration, we hope to inspire a renewed sense of faith and understanding of the divine forces at work in our lives, just as they were in the days of King Hezekiah. During the siege of Jerusalem, the Assyrian Empire stood as one of the most formidable military powers of the ancient world, renowned for its size, strength, and ruthless tactics. At the height of its power, the Assyrian army was a well-oiled machine, boasting an estimated 185,000 warriors, a staggering number that underscored their dominance in the region. This vast force was composed of highly trained infantry, skilled archers, and charioteers, all equipped with advanced weaponry for the time, including iron swords and powerful bows. The Assyrians were not only numerous but also strategically adept, employing a range of military tactics that made them a fearsome adversary. Their approach to warfare included the use of siege engines, battering rams, and ladders, allowing them to breach fortified cities effectively. They were also known for their ability to adapt to various combat situations, utilizing both direct assaults and prolonged sieges to wear down their enemies. The historical context of the Assyrian Empire's conquests reveals a pattern of brutality that instilled fear across the globe. The Assyrians were infamous for their merciless treatment of conquered peoples, often resorting to extreme measures such as mass deportations, torture, and executions. Their campaigns were characterized by a desire not only to conquer but also to instill terror, ensuring that any resistance would be met with swift and brutal retribution. This reputation for cruelty served as a psychological weapon in itself, as neighboring kingdoms were often paralyzed by fear of the Assyrian war machine. The empire's expansionist policies led to the subjugation of numerous territories, and by the time of the siege of Jerusalem, the Assyrians had already laid waste to several key cities, including Lachish, which had fallen just prior to their assault on Jerusalem. This history of conquest and brutality created an atmosphere of dread, as the people of Jerusalem understood the fate that awaited them should they resist. As the Assyrian forces surrounded Jerusalem, they employed psychological warfare to further demoralize the inhabitants. The Assyrian king, Sennacherib, sent envoys to taunt the people of Jerusalem, delivering messages designed to instill fear and doubt. These envoys questioned the ability of the God of Israel to protect his people, boasting of the Assyrian victories over other nations and mocking the idea that Jerusalem could withstand such a powerful army. They proclaimed that no god had been able to save any city from the might of the Assyrians, attempting to sow seeds of despair among the citizens. This tactic was not merely about physical domination, it was a calculated effort to break the spirit of the defenders and create internal divisions. The Assyrians understood that a city could be conquered not just through force but also by undermining the morale of its inhabitants. The siege of Jerusalem thus became a battleground not only of swords and shields but also of faith and resolve. The psychological tactics employed by the Assyrians were designed to exploit the fears of the people, making them question their faith and the possibility of divine intervention. The Assyrian strategy was effective in many instances, as their reputation for brutality often led to swift surrenders. However, in Jerusalem, the response was different. The inhabitants, led by King Hezekiah, chose to resist, drawing strength from their faith and the belief that they were not alone in their struggle. This clash of wills, set against the backdrop of the Assyrian Empire's overwhelming power, would ultimately lead to a dramatic and miraculous outcome that would resonate throughout history. The siege of Jerusalem serves as a powerful reminder of the resilience of faith in the face of seemingly insurmountable odds, highlighting the profound impact of both military might and spiritual conviction in shaping the course of history. King Hezekiah's response to the looming threat of the Assyrian Empire is a compelling narrative of faith, leadership, and strategic foresight. As the king of Judah, Hezekiah faced one of the most daunting challenges of his reign when the Assyrian forces, led by King Sennacherib, laid siege to Jerusalem. In the face of this overwhelming military might, Hezekiah's unwavering faith in God became the cornerstone of his leadership. He recognized that the survival of Jerusalem depended not only on military preparations but also on spiritual renewal. One of his first actions was to restore proper worship in the city, which had been neglected during the reign of his father, Ahaz. Hezekiah initiated significant religious reforms, removing idols and high places, and reinstating the worship of Yahweh as the central focus of the community. This revival of faith was crucial, as it united the people under a common belief and purpose, reinforcing their resolve to withstand the Assyrian siege. In addition to his spiritual leadership, Hezekiah demonstrated remarkable strategic acumen in preparing Jerusalem for defense. Understanding the gravity of the situation, he took decisive steps to fortify the city and ensure its water supply. One of his most notable achievements was the construction of the Siloam Tunnel, an engineering marvel that redirected water from the Gihon spring into the city. This tunnel not only secured a vital water source during the siege but also served as a tactical advantage, allowing the inhabitants of Jerusalem to remain hydrated while denying the Assyrian forces access to this critical resource. The construction of the Siloam Tunnel was a monumental undertaking, showcasing Hezekiah's foresight and determination to protect his people. It exemplified his ability to blend faith with practical action, demonstrating that reliance on God was complemented by prudent preparations. Hezekiah's character as a righteous leader was further highlighted by his ability to inspire and rally his people during this time of crisis. Faced with the psychological warfare employed by the Assyrians, which sought to instill fear and doubt, Hezekiah remained steadfast in his conviction that God would deliver Jerusalem. He encouraged the citizens to trust in divine protection, reminding them of the power of their God in the face of adversity. His words were not merely rhetoric, they were a source of hope that galvanized the people. Hezekiah's leadership style was characterized by humility and a deep sense of responsibility for his subjects. He did not shy away from the challenges but faced them head-on, embodying the qualities of a true leader who prioritizes the welfare of his people above all else. As the siege progressed, Hezekiah's faith was put to the ultimate test. The Assyrian forces, confident in their military superiority, sent messages taunting the people of Jerusalem and questioning their faith. Rather than succumbing to despair, Hezekiah turned to prayer, seeking guidance and intervention from God. This act of faith was pivotal, as it demonstrated his reliance on divine power rather than solely on military might. The prophet Isaiah, a key figure during this period, delivered a message of reassurance to Hezekiah, affirming that God would protect the city. This prophetic assurance further strengthened Hezekiah's resolve and that of the people, reinforcing their collective faith in divine intervention. The events leading up to the siege of Jerusalem by the Assyrian Empire were marked by a series of aggressive military campaigns that targeted the fortified cities of Judah, creating an atmosphere of fear and uncertainty among its inhabitants. The Assyrians, under King Sennacherib, had already demonstrated their military might by successfully capturing key cities such as Lachish, which fell to their forces after a brutal assault. This victory not only showcased the Assyrian army's strength but also served as a grim warning to Jerusalem and its people. The Assyrians employed a combination of overwhelming force and psychological tactics designed to demoralize their enemies and facilitate their conquests. Their strategy included the use of siege warfare, where they would surround cities, cutting off supplies and reinforcements, while simultaneously launching direct assaults to breach the walls. As the Assyrian forces advanced, they utilized psychological warfare to further instill fear in the hearts of the people of Judah. Sennacherib's officials, known for their cunning and ruthlessness, engaged in a campaign of intimidation, sending messages to the inhabitants of Jerusalem that were laden with threats and blasphemous challenges against the God of Israel. They openly mocked the faith of the Jewish people, questioning the ability of their God to protect him from the might of the Assyrian army. In one of their taunts, they proclaimed that no God had been able to save any city from the Assyrians, implying that the God of Israel would be no different. This tactic was designed not only to undermine the people's faith but also to create divisions among them, fostering doubt and despair in the face of an overwhelming enemy. The atmosphere in Jerusalem was charged with fear and uncertainty as the news of the Assyrian advances spread. The citizens were acutely aware of the fate that had befallen other cities that had resisted Assyrian rule, often characterized by destruction, deportation, and brutality. The psychological impact of these events weighed heavily on the minds of the people, who were left to grapple with the reality of their situation. As the Assyrian army approached, the sense of impending doom grew, and many began to question whether their faith could truly protect him from such a powerful adversary. The blasphemous challenges posed by the Assyrian officials only served to amplify this fear, as they painted a picture of inevitable defeat and destruction. In the face of these threats, the leadership of King Hezekiah became crucial. He recognized the need to address the growing anxiety among the people and sought to bolster their spirits through faith and unity. However, the psychological tactics employed by the Assyrians had already taken a toll, creating a climate of doubt that was difficult to overcome. The citizens of Jerusalem were torn between their historical faith in God and the overwhelming evidence of Assyrian military prowess. The Assyrian officials' taunts echoed in their minds, leading many to wonder if their God could truly deliver them from such a dire situation. As the siege loomed closer, the tension in Jerusalem escalated. The fortified walls that had once symbolized security now felt like a prison, and the people were left to ponder their fate. The Assyrian army, emboldened by their previous victories, prepared to unleash their full might upon the city, while the inhabitants of Jerusalem were left to grapple with their fears and uncertainties. The psychological warfare waged by the Assyrians had created a deep sense of vulnerability, and the citizens were acutely aware that their survival depended not only on their physical defenses but also on their collective faith and resolve. In the face of the overwhelming threat posed by the Assyrian Empire, King Hezekiah's response was marked by profound humility and a deep reliance on prayer. As the Assyrian forces advanced and the psychological warfare intensified, Hezekiah recognized the gravity of the situation and the need for divine intervention. One of the most poignant moments in this narrative is when Hezekiah tore his clothes, a traditional expression of mourning and distress, and sought God in the temple. This act was not merely a display of despair, it was a powerful symbol of his humility and recognition of his own limitations in the face of such a formidable enemy. By turning to the temple, the very heart of worship and communion with God, Hezekiah demonstrated his understanding that true strength comes from acknowledging one's dependence on the divine. Hezekiah's prayer in the temple was significant for several reasons. First and foremost, it reflected his acknowledgement of God's sovereignty over all nations, including the Assyrians. In his prayer, Hezekiah implored God to hear his plea and to see the blasphemous threats made by Sennacherib against the people of Judah. He recognized that the Assyrian king's arrogance was not just a challenge to Jerusalem but a direct affront to the God of Israel. By framing his prayer in this way, Hezekiah was not only seeking deliverance for his people but also affirming God's ultimate authority and power. He understood that the battle was not merely a physical confrontation but a spiritual one, where the honor of God was at stake. This acknowledgement of divine sovereignty was crucial, as it set the stage for the miraculous intervention that would follow. The contrast between Hezekiah's humility and the arrogance of King Sennacherib of Assyria could not be more pronounced. While Hezekiah approached God with a heart full of reverence and supplication, Sennacherib boasted of his military conquests and mocked the God of Israel. The Assyrian king's messages to Jerusalem were filled with disdain, as he proclaimed that no God had been able to save any city from his might. This arrogance was emblematic of the Assyrian Empire's approach to warfare, where they relied on their military strength and sought to instill fear through intimidation. In stark contrast, Hezekiah's humility was a testament to his faith and understanding that true power lies not in human might but in divine providence. As Hezekiah prayed, he poured out his heart before God, expressing his fears and concerns while simultaneously affirming his trust in God's ability to deliver. He pleaded for salvation, not just for the sake of the people but to demonstrate God's glory and power to the nations. This prayer was a pivotal moment, as it encapsulated the essence of Hezekiah's leadership, one that was rooted in faith, humility, and a desire for God's will to be done. Hezekiah's willingness to seek God in such a desperate time served as an example to his people, encouraging them to turn their hearts back to God and trust in his promises. The atmosphere in Jerusalem was one of tension and fear, but Hezekiah's response provided a beacon of hope. His humility in the face of such dire circumstances inspired the people to look beyond their immediate fears and to place their trust in God. This collective turning towards God was essential, as it united the people in their faith and reinforced their resolve to withstand the Assyrian threat. The miraculous event that saved Jerusalem from the Assyrian siege stands as a powerful testament to divine intervention and the fulfillment of God's promises. Following King Hezekiah's heartfelt prayer and his earnest plea for help, the prophet Isaiah delivered a profound prophecy that would change the course of history for the people of Judah. Isaiah, acting as God's messenger, assured Hezekiah that the Assyrian army would not prevail against Jerusalem. He conveyed a message of hope, declaring that God had heard the cries of his people and would protect the city from destruction. Isaiah's prophecy emphasized that the Assyrians would not enter Jerusalem, nor would they shoot an arrow there. Instead, they would return to their own land in disgrace.